The silence surrounding the old farmhouse was not the peaceful quiet of the country. It was a heavy, suffocating shroud that seemed to swallow sound and light alike. For several days, the world had remained frozen in a tableau of gray and brown, the only movement coming from the biting wind that whipped across the desolate fields of what had once been a prosperous homestead. Two men, huddled in the brush several hundred yards from the structure, had become fixtures of this bleak landscape, their eyes burning from the strain of watching a house that refused to show a single sign of life. They were part of Eric Sawyer's militia, tasked with keeping Elias under constant surveillance. To them, the mission seemed simple: watch the house, wait for a move, and report back. But as the days bled into one another, the simplicity of the task had curdled into a cold, gnawing dread. "How is he still in there?" the younger soldier whispered, his voice cracking from the cold. He adjusted the collar of his coat, which offered little protection against the relentless chill of the twilight age. No smoke from the chimney, no flickering of a candle or a lamp at night. It's like the place is a tomb. The militia team leader, a man hardened by 2 years of survival of the fittest logic, didn't answer immediately. He was staring through his binoculars at the open stable. "The horse is still there," he muttered. "I can see it moving from one end of the stall to the other. If the horse is there, he's there." He reached for the radio at his belt, the static, heavy lifeline to the mayor's office in New Cody. The device crackled to life before he could even press the button. Eric Sawyer's voice, sharp and laced with a growing agitation, filled the air. "Report," Sawyer demanded. The team leader sighed, the frost of his breath visible in the dim light. "Still nothing, sir. No movement in the house. We've been watching the perimeter around the clock, just as you ordered." On the other end of the line, miles away in the relative comfort of his repurposed office, Sawyer's temper flared. "How can there be nothing going on there?" he barked over the radio, his suspicion bleeding through the speakers. "How is he keeping warm? Are you sure he didn't just sneak away?" The team leader looked back at the farmhouse, its windows like empty eye sockets. "It's possible, but I doubt it," he replied, though his own confidence was wavering. "I don't know how he's keeping warm in there. We don't see smoke, and at night there aren't any lights. If he has heat in there, it's got to be battery-powered." "Or you let him sneak off and you are looking at an empty house," Sawyer retorted, his voice dripping with annoyance at his men's perceived lack of focus. To Sawyer, who had systematically dismantled 7 other settlements through sheer administrative and physical force, the idea of one man defying his plans by simply being invisible was an insult he could not tolerate. The younger soldier nudged the team leader. "We can find out for sure," he suggested, gesturing toward the house with his rifle. He was tired of the cold, tired of the waiting. He wanted to kick the door in and end the mystery. But Sawyer was not a man of reckless impulse. He knew the reputation of the man they were hunting. He knew that Elias possessed skills that bordered on the preternatural, skills the men under surveillance would be shocked to learn of if they lived long enough to tell anyone. "No, stay away from the house. Watch the perimeter only," Sawyer demanded, his voice final. The team leader acknowledged the orders with a curt "copy," but the tension between the 2 men on the ridge had reached a breaking point. The inaction was wearing them down. In a decision that would prove to be their biggest mistake, the team leader decided to split them up. He believed that by covering both the front and the back of the house from different vantage points, they could finally catch Elias in a lapse of his magician-like stealth. "I'll take the high point overlooking the back side," the leader told the soldier. "You stay here and watch the front. If he so much as twitches a curtain, I want to know." The team leader moved off, flanking the property until he reached a rise that offered a clear view of the rear of the farmhouse and the open stable. He settled into the dirt, his eyes fixed on the horse. The animal seemed restless, pacing the length of its stall, its breath pluming in the air. The leader felt a sense of grim satisfaction. From this height, nothing could leave the back door without him seeing it. What he failed to realize was that the movement he was not aware of was happening directly behind him. Elias had not been hiding in the house. He had been a part of the landscape, watching the watchers since the moment they arrived. He had waited with the patience of a predator, observing their habits, their radio checks, and their growing frustration. He had waited for them to give him the advantage, and the moment they split up, he took it. The team leader never heard a footfall. He didn't hear the rustle of dead grass or the snap of a twig. The first indication that he was no longer alone was the sudden, overwhelming sensation of a presence looming over him, and before he knew anything was happening, Elias had moved behind him. The magician had appeared from the shadows of the very ridge the soldier thought protected him. The team leader felt the cold steel of a knife as it was plunged into the side of his neck. It was a swift, silent strike, designed to eliminate the threat before a single cry could be let out. Elias held the man as he slumped, his eyes cold and devoid of the senseless bloodshed of the old wars, yet filled with the grim necessity of the new one. Elias didn't pause to reflect. He immediately turned his sights toward the second man. The younger soldier, still stationed at the front, was beginning to feel the weight of the silence. It had been too long since his leader had checked in. He shifted in his position behind a dirt mound, his focus flickering as he glanced toward the ridge where his partner should have been. The cold was making his reactions sluggish, his mind wandering to the warmth of the hourly companions back at New Cody's town hall. He lost focus for only a second, and a second was all Elias needed as he maneuvered with terrifying efficiency, staying clear of the house and using the natural contours of the land to mask his approach. He rose up from the very dirt mound that the soldier believed was his cover. The soldier turned, his eyes widening as he realized the ghost of the farmhouse was standing right over him. He didn't even have time to raise his weapon before he caught a bullet in the head. The silence quickly returned to the farm, more absolute than before. Elias stood over the body, his breath steady. There was no joy in the act, only the cold calculus of survival. He knew that by killing these men, he had sent a message to Sawyer, even if no words were spoken, and the lack of a radio check-in would tell the mayor everything he needed to know. With the methodical calmness that defined him, Elias used his horse to drag the men to a secluded area by the stable. The horse, sensing the grim nature of the task, moved quietly as Elias prepared to bury the remains. He worked through the twilight, the shovel hitting the frozen earth with a rhythmic thud, ensuring that the evidence of the militia's biggest mistake was hidden beneath the soil. Back in New Cody, Eric Sawyer sat by his radio, the silence from the other end growing louder with every passing minute. He called out to the team leader again and again, but there was no response. The suspicion that had been gnawing at him all week solidified into a hard, cold reality. He walked over and looked out the window at the town he had conquered, the people he had turned into servants, the economy he had rebuilt on bartering and depravity. He had thought that by controlling the resources, he controlled the people. But as he stared into the darkness toward the west, he realized he had encountered something he hadn't accounted for. Elias was serious enough not to be taken lightly, Sawyer realized. The ghost of the farmhouse was not just a scavenger or a holdout. He was a predator who had just turned the mayor's hunters into the hunted. The war for New Cody had shifted, and for the first time since the lights went out 5 years ago, Eric Sawyer felt the cold hand of doubt.